there is considerable evidence that mass killings, torture, and other inhumane acts against members of the PMOI were conducted with genocidal intent. And here I endorse the comments made by Mr. Lewis, and I'm very grateful to him for what he just said. The case for genocide against members of the PMOI rests, in my view, on the basis that the perpetrators of this crime perceived members of the group as munafiqeen. For these perpetrators, members of this group had become deviants. They had deserted Islam and were waging war against Islam. What I have called the atrocity crimes, in particular the 1988 massacre, represent the commission of the worst and the most egregious human rights abuses of our living memory, whereby high-ranking state officials connived, conspired, and actively engaged to plan, order, and commit crimes against humanity and genocide against nationals of their own state. Notwithstanding the availability of overwhelming available evidence, to this day, those with criminal responsibility for these grave and most serious violations of human rights and crimes under international law remain in power and in control. The international community has been unable or unwilling to hold these individuals accountable. I urge individual states, and the point has already been made, I urge individual states to exercise universal and other forms of extraterritorial jurisdiction in relation to crimes under international law committed by the regime by initiating adequately resourced criminal investigations, identifying those suspected of responsibility, including commanders and their superiors, and issuing, when there is sufficient admissible evidence, international arrest warrants. I will conclude by this point, that we must not engage with a regime whose leaders have committed atrocity crimes. The international community must take concrete steps to end the continuing impunity within Iran, ensuring accountability, truth, justice, reparations, and remedies.
The construct of international law, and the Rome Statute in particular, gives ICC jurisdiction over crimes that happen on member states of the Rome Statute. So if an international crime against humanity is committed in Albania, ICC would have jurisdiction if Albania doesn't prosecute or investigate. If a crime against humanity is committed in France, ICC would have jurisdiction if France doesn't prosecute or investigate. The point then becomes any attack or violation of rights of the members of MEK in those countries to the point that the violation amounts to international criminal law, international crime, will be subject, something that the ICC will have jurisdiction over.
So certainly it's important to deal with those particular issues. When I was chair of the working group, we had testimony about Camp Ashraf. And there needs to be an investigation on those particular circumstances. The 7 people who enforcibly disappeared, their families still want to know where they are. What happened to the people who were killed on that particular day in 2013 needs answers, and families need to know those particular things. So I have solidarity with the people in Ashraf 3 in Albania, but the issues relating to Ashraf 1, Camp Liberty, and the other places also need to be dealt with. There's also a question on the accountability of Iraq about what happened as far as those victims were concerned.
Thus, while the victims of the 1988 massacre may not have direct recourse to the court, the residents of Ashraf 3, located in Albania, an ICC state party, are within the jurisdiction of the ICC, and if Iran conducts operations against them, could be protected under the protective umbrella of the Rome Statute. Evidence of the 1988 massacre could be introduced in such a case by way of showing criminal intent in respect to current crimes. There are thousands of Iranians living abroad in ICC states parties.
Today, however, the wall of disinformation has come down, and derogatory portrayals of the PMOI and NCRI have been debunked. The report of the UN rapporteur comes a decade after major court cases in the UK, EU, France, and the United States debunking allegations against the PMOI and NCRI. With the truth now exposed, we can see that the West has accepted and amplified substantially false portrayals of Iran and its resistance for at least a generation.
The trial of Khamenei Nouri, I think, marked an historic moment as the first legal proceeding related to the 1988 massacres. And I think Kenneth Lewis should be thanked again for the work you did in moving that case forward. We owe you a great deal of gratitude as well. What he did was to involve this extensive witness testimony, including survivors of the massacre, and as you said, bring together a trial, a dossier that can be used time and time again. Being found guilty of all charges was extraordinary. Being upheld by the appeals court was even more extraordinary. And I want to say that it serves for me as a precedent in international law and illustrates the very best use of universal jurisdiction in holding individuals accountable for atrocity crimes.
It's not only the politics that has to change, and I agree with all of those who have said that, but it's quite clear that we have to sanction not only the Revolutionary Guard, this is quite clear, it's more symbolic, we know that, but we have to sanction the judges who are misusing their power by, being the henchmen of the Ayatollah regime. And this is most important. And let me say, President-elect, I found your 10-point plan to abolish the death penalty very important.
My own opinion, having worked with the PMOI since 2003, was that the regime's intent to exterminate the PMOI was religiously motivated and was based on their opinion that the PMOI represented religious heretics. This intent to exterminate the PMOI existed already long before June 20th, 1981. And that's the date when the PMOI was finally forced to take up arms to defend itself and to defend democracy in Iran after having been attacked at this mass demonstration. Thus, the policy of exterminating the PMOI has no nexus or connection with the non-international armed conflict either, since the non-international armed conflict began after the 20th of June, 1981. The fact that religious reformism develops into a political movement does not alter the fact that an organization, in this case the PMOI, should still be considered a religious group in the context of the Genocide Convention. And this is very, very important. We have both the question of intent and we have the question of what is the group. So this is my firm opinion.
Dear colleagues and friends of a free and democratic Iran, thanks to the unlimited efforts of this organization, the events of, in particular, 1988 are still present as if they had happened yesterday. The link to the executions of this year 2024 becomes more and more evident since the new president of Iran is in office. A moderate government? No way. On the contrary. We observe, on the one hand, a beautiful country, but on the other hand, led by a theocratic dictatorship that the people of Iran have not and do not deserve. But this organization, Madam President-elect, can right this wrong by own actions it is already acquainted with. We must go one step higher from utmost valuable means of inquiry to a tribunal established by the civil society of Iran, represented by exile organizations led by Maryam Rajavi.
But if the MEK is so insignificant, so isolated and so marginalized, what accounts for the regime's endless obsession with it? Why the murders at Camps Ashraf and Liberty? Why the unceasing propaganda campaign? Why the attempt to bomb the NCRI rally, a rally that I attended here in Paris in 2018? And why this new crusade, this show trial whose foreordained outcome no one outside of Iran, and probably no one inside it either, is going to credit? The answer to those questions is, I think, self-evident. The regime is deathly afraid of the Iranian resistance, and with good reason. It will stop at nothing to destroy what it most fears: democratic opposition that offers the Iranian people hope for freedom from their oppressors.
And after that meeting at the Congress, I received a letter from the legal department, from the legal affairs department of the United Nations in New York. And literally they were asking me to shut up. They told me to put up or shut up. And I did reply. I said to them, I will not put up and I will not shut up. That letter is on my file at the United Nations. And I also hold the copy of my reply to them. I said, see you in court. Of course, they didn't dare to take me to court. But as I promised, I will not shut up.